Hello, in this video we will see how to create a new Wargame plugin for our platform. Okay, so what you want to do, you want to create a new Java project and, for example, call it War, press finish, create a new package, let's also call it War. The next thing you want to do is you want to configure the build path. You want to add external jars and add our platform jar, which is called cdp.jar. Okay, now let's create our main class and call it War. War is a game, therefore it extends game class. We import it from logic.client. We add the unimplemented methods and start filling them one by one, which is where the fun part begins. First of all, we want to create our default constructor and create a new static boolean variable which is called tie. That variable indicates whether tie mode is on or off. At the constructor we set tie to false. Okay, so now we are going to fill the deal cards method, which is basically how cards are going to be dealt at the beginning of the game. We can easily deal all the cards to all the players in the game by choosing game.deal all cards method, but we are going to create a new costume deal cards just for the example. Okay, I've already written the code, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain it. So the first thing, we get the size of the deck by calling getSize method from the deck variable, which we get by extending the game class. We also get the players variable, which is an array list of players that are in the game. We get the number of players that are currently in the game and create an array list for each player. In the first loop, we create for each player in the game an array list that contains all the cards that is going to get at the beginning of the game. The second loop go over all the cards in the deck, draw each card from the deck and deal it to the proper player. That means it adds it to the proper array list that belongs to the proper player. The last loop actually sends in the communication a message about which player got which cards. We do it by getting the connection manager instance by calling the getConnectionManager method. Then we send to all the players a new message, which is a new deal card action, and we set the proper cards array list and the proper player which is going to get those cards. We get the player ID by player.get the proper player, which is I, that defined at the beginning of the loop, and then we get the ID from the player. Okay, before we continue to the next method, which is the getDeck method, we want to create a new card listener or card handler that implements the card events handler. We add the unimplemented methods and basically do nothing because the logic deals with all the hiding and revealing of the cards, and those actions triggers only when a player hide or reveal the card by double tap it. Okay, now we are going to fill the get deck method by returning a new default deck and create a new card listener method instance, and in the shuffle parameter we insert true since we want to shuffle the new deck. We return the default deck because we don't need to create a new costume deck or a new costume cards for our wargame. We will be using the classic cards. The next method is the instructions method. What it does, it returns a string which contains all the instructions the user needs. For example, in our wargame, I wrote the following instructions. Minimum players defines the minimum number of players we need to actually play the game, which is 2. Maximum players is by default 4, since our platform doesn't support more than that. The round end method defines what happens when the round ended. In our case, after each player placed his card on the public area, and if it's not tie, the round has ended. So right now I will explain the on round end function that I wrote. The on round end function basically returns an integer, which is the ID of the player that won the round. Okay, let's explain the code. I have an integer that is the answer that I'm going to return. This example is for 2 players and 2 players only. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the first public area and the second public area. We need a public area for each player, so each player can place his card on a different public area. I'm getting the winner of this round using the getWinner method, which is a private method that I created. What I do next is I check if someone won the round. If so, I create an array list of pairs. Each pair contains 2 droppables. One defines the public area from which I need to take the cards from, and the other defines the player area which I need to give the cards to. I take the cards from public area number 1 and public area number 2 and give all the cards to the winner of the round. Next, I'm calling the card.moveTo function in order to basically move both logically and graphically the cards to the player who won the round. I set the return variable by getting the ID of the player that won the round and check to see if someone won the game. If someone won the game, I basically return null because no one needs to start the next round. To this area I enter if no one won the round. Basically that means that right now we have a tie. In this case, I enable the interface for each device. Keep in mind that when you program to our platform, each device goes and executes the onRoundEnd function. Therefore, in each device, the user interface will be enabled.